Little girl gives her seat to an old man, then the security cameras catch something special. When young Tracy Gibson was traveling on the bus to go to school, she had no idea that a simple action would change her life. The footage went viral of her kind deed, and she was heavily rewarded for her kind behavior. This is some background before we get into what happened on the chilly winter's day. Tracy was adopted into a loving family after having been placed in foster care by her birth mother. This was something that Tracy battled with for years until she began to realize that it was for the best. Her mother couldn't care for her, and it wasn't that she didn't love her, it was instead a selfless act of putting Tracy's needs above her own. Tracy was adopted by Stan and Beverly Hillsborough, a 40-year-old couple who hadn't been able to conceive on their own. Stan and Beverly were the perfect parents who gave Tracy the absolute best start in life. She went to a top private school and received amazing marks. Tracy excelled in playing the violin, and she was a very kind girl. She was small for her age, which led to some teasing from her peers, but with the solid foundation at home, Tracy was able to brush that off. Her best friend was a boy named John, and the two did everything together. John lived down the street from Tracy, and the two would meet up every day after school and either study or hang out. Nothing was going on between the two, though. Tracy had noticed that John didn't seem to like girls, and he would eventually come out to her as gay. This didn't change anything for Tracy. She loved John for who he was, not who he dated. This only made the two closer. They were practically joined at the hip. So imagine how hard it was when Tracy found out that she'd been accepted to a top school that was a 40 minutes ride away from home. Tracy and John's routine had always been to ride their bicycles to school every day, and just being at the same school was very important to them. John wasn't a selfish person, and he insisted that Tracy take the amazing opportunity that had been given to her. She had dreams of being a professional violinist one day, and the school would be a step closer to living that dream. Thankfully, the two still lived on the same street and will be able to see each other fairly often. Still though, Tracy's schedule was about to be a whole lot busier. The following month came, and it was Tracy's time to start at her new school. She was 14 years old at that time and had been at her last school for 7 years, so it was going to be a big change, but she was up for it. Tracy stepped onto the bus at 6:30 a.m. that morning and was off on a new adventure. The school was beyond grand, and many of the pupils were very pretentious. Tracy was there on a scholarship, which was a lot of pressure on her as she needed to perform well to keep it. Tracy was impressed that first day when she was asked to do a violin solo in her music class. The music teacher was a very strict German woman, and Tracy had heard rumblings about her being very hard to please. She was called up in front of everyone and given a very difficult piece to perform. Tracy nailed it though, and despite the teacher's hard facade, she would see that she had impressed her. The teacher pulled Tracy aside at the end of the class and confirmed that she told Tracy that she hadn't heard a girl of her age play that piece before. It turned out that this teacher liked to test the scholarship children, and Tracy had certainly passed the test with flying colors. Things were turning out better than expected. When Tracy arrived home that day, John wanted to hear about everything that had gone on. Tracy recounted the day's events and told him about what had happened in the cafeteria. Tracy had walked in without knowing anyone and was slightly worried about how things would go. She went to sit at her table after getting her lunch, and to her surprise, a group of girls came and sat with her. They wanted to hear about where she had come from and chat more with her. Their names were Stacy, Melissa, and Thumb. Tracy got on particularly well with Thimba, who was an exchange student from Zambia. She too was attending the school on a music scholarship. The girls took Tracy under their wing and began giving her the lay of the land. They told her who to avoid and all about the various teachers and what they expected of their students. It was very useful having that kind of information, and even more useful to have some friends that she could spend time with. John was so happy to hear that Tracy's first day went well and jokingly told her not to forget about him. She gave him a playful shove and said, "I couldn't do that if I tried." The rest of Tracy's time at her new school was going well. Before she knew it, she had already completed a full 6 months there and things were going well. She was at the top in her class and everything, but Tracy stood out above the rest in music. She had even received the honor of being the only one in her age group that was allowed in the school's orchestra. Their orchestra was one of the best in the country and traveled around competing at various competitions, so it was a big deal to be allowed in. Tracy knew that, and when she got home that day and told her parents, they were so incredibly proud of her.